Hello, welcome to The Long Road. I'm your host, Chris Roberts, and I'm only going to speak for about 20 minutes today, and then we're going to end up with a clip concerning the constitutional amendment debate on the House floor. What we're going to do is this show is basically going to be a wrap-up of what's happened in Concord over the past year. Basically, we're all done at Concord. We're done causing damage. We're done causing havoc. The only thing that we really have left to do is address any vetoes that the governor may veto, bills that he may veto. One of the big ones that's a concern to a lot of people is both the House and the Senate passed the medical marijuana bill. We don't know what the governor's going to do, but he said over and over again he has a lot of concerns about the bill. And so we don't know, like I said, we don't know if he's going to veto that. But 2 years ago or 3 years ago when we had marriage equality, he repeatedly said that he would vote against marriage equality. He said, I'm not going to vote for marriage equality unless this bill gets passed. We worked on it, that bill got passed, and he said, I'm not going to vote for marriage equality until an additional bill got passed. And once that third bill got passed, went an hour and a half late after that third bill's passage, the governor was signing all three bills and said that it was a good day for the state of New Hampshire. So again, we don't know what's going to happen. We did kill a number of bills between the Senate and the House. The Senate proved to be the wise individuals, as Constitution and the framing fathers have stated. They put an end to the moratorium, the attempted moratorium ban on any refugees being resettled into New Hampshire, and which would have made New Hampshire look really like a backwoods state, and really I think would have put New Hampshire on that cliff deciding whether we should have the first in the nation primary. They put an end to the attempt to tax our hospitals. Again, there was just a whole bunch of stuff going on. We had three constitutional amendments that were up focused. The first one that went down was the one to increase the requirement for any increase in taxes or any increase in fees by up to 60% instead of the 50+1 majority. Basically, it would say that 40+1 could hold the rest of the state hostage to any tax increase or fee increase. So basically, when people talk about tax increase, but they're not looking at the fact is that, okay, basically 40+1 could say the fishing license, the hunting license, the driver's license, car registration fees, none of those could go up unless it took 60+1 to authorize it. And they were basically saying as well, we could trust the House and Senate to do the right thing at the right time in a moment of crisis. Well, if you look at the recent floods, you looked at the flood in 2005, the Mother's Day ice storm, and some of the other ones, well, if federal government came and said, okay, we're going to match you at FEMA, and it was, say, $500 million worth of damage. And our requirement would be, as a state and local community, to come up with 25%. So bingo, when you look at that, 25% of $500,000 is $100 million. A little bit more, $125 million. And so, which means the state government would have to come up with basically, rounded off, $65 million. So if 60+1 did not authorize that increase in tax revenue, then we would have to turn down $375 million to take care of storm or catastrophe damage. Those are some of the other things that people weren't looking at. The one that did pass was the one that says no income tax on income of natural persons. Well, natural person, that means, yeah, a corporation, while it's a quote under the law is a person, it's not a natural person, so it would be allowed to be taxed. But the question it said, it didn't say wages, it said income. People forget if you get return on your CD, you get return on your investment, those are still income. You report those incomes on your income tax, but they're not wages. It's a total separate line. Okay, that one made it. That will go to the ballot. One of the things I don't think people realize is the state of New Hampshire has an income tax, and an income tax is on dividends. Basically, dividends, unearned income. If you make more than $2,500 in dividends, you need to pay an income tax on it. What happened on this one, no one could answer the question is, excuse me, if income is earned by a natural person, would the constitutional amendment now then make the income tax on dividends unconstitutional? And they says, well, we'll worry about that later once we get it passed. Well, so if a lot of people, where we have people coming from Connecticut and New York and Massachusetts coming and retiring in New Hampshire, where some of the fastest growing communities is housing for 55 and older, where we have no sales tax, we really quote unquote have no income tax, and we don't have any death tax. And so this would be perfect. So if I go into, if I'm from New York and I'm a retired policeman and I come up to New Hampshire and I move into a place like Miltonboro where it has maybe $6 to $8 per thousand property tax, and if I don't have to, I have to pay really low property tax, I have no income tax, no sales tax, and no death tax, and quote unquote, if the constitutional amendment goes and says, hey, no dividend tax because the dividend tax is an income tax and it's income on a natural person, then this would be great. I would be able to move to New Hampshire because New Hampshire would be a tax-free haven for people. So I could have a small house in Massachusetts or a small house in New York and New Jersey and sell it and come up to New Hampshire and live really well. Like I had said before, my daughter had a house in Southern California, bought the house for $245, sold it for $600, and then moved to Georgia and got a nice house. Now it's on 6 acres, and it was only $330,000. And so that's what could happen to as more and more people would take advantage of New Hampshire as we try to change our tax laws. And the people that would suffer would be the small communities, the communities that have children going to school. And again, as I said before, is if you were born outside of New Hampshire, you made your money and you get good investments, then New Hampshire would be a great place to retire. If you're born in New Hampshire and went to school in New Hampshire would be a lousy place to raise a family and grow up because you would not be able to afford the property taxes. You would not be able to ensure that your children get a really great education as the amount of money available for education drops off. If you look at the jobs that are growing in New Hampshire, line cooks, nurse practitioners, other ones in healthcare, education, we talk about education, but we're talking about tutors, we're talking about paraprofessionals. A lot of times people are not working full time, so they don't get benefits. They might get $12, $13 an hour. Yes, you can look at McDonald's. McDonald's stock is going through the roof. Walmart stock is going up $13 in the last couple of months because they're making great profits, but they're making profits by paying low wages, and basically a lot of these people are averaging about $9.50 an hour and no health care. And so what's happening is their children are being paid, their medical is being paid by the state of New Hampshire and the other taxpayers because the quality of the health care that the people, even if the companies are providing, the people can't afford. So the big debate up there in Concord would be on the constitutional amendment concerning education funding, which lucky it failed. It failed by 13 votes. It was close. When when you look at it, the Republicans had 297 members. It required 237 votes to pass to go on the ballot. It did not. What did we get there? No, it wasn't 237. It was 60%. So it was 240. Yeah, that's right. 237, and it only got 224 votes. It failed by 13. So basically, 7 people had changed their vote, then it would have passed. But it was 365, 35 people either didn't show up for numerous reasons. Yes, some were sick. Other ones took a walk so they wouldn't put their name on record. What you're going to see in the video clip is you're going to see one individual get up and say, basically, I don't know what my responsibility is up here. We need to pass this amendment so the voters of New Hampshire can tell me what my responsibility is when I come up here. And as a Marine officer, and I understand the importance of taking personal responsibility when you're up here representing a lot of people. I just couldn't believe that someone stood up and says, I don't know what my responsibility is. My question is, why did you run in the first place if you don't know what your responsibility is? And if you're making votes based on the fact that you don't know what your responsibility is, that's really putting our children at risk. And it failed. We had 2 individuals. Representative Mirsky was one who said that, you know what, I changed my mind. I asked for reconsideration, and we need to vote and we need to pass this. And he stood up and accused the Supreme Court justice of making backdoor, unethical decisions in the Claremont decision. He basically said they failed to follow the law. They did their own backroom deals. And the question is, if you're going to stand up there, he was called on it. The Speaker O'Brien said, no big deal. He can continue to talk, and he continued to talk about our Supreme Court justice being unethical. So if you're saying you're unethical on this decision, you can easily apply that the great majority of the decisions at the Supreme Court could be unethical, could be tainted. The judges throw out expert witnesses if they're tainted or if they performed unethical. How can you trust our courts, quote unquote, if they're unethical? I don't think they're ethical. And you sit there and a Constitution amendment is necessary, and we must not give up on making it a reality. Let's not lose sight of the fact that it's only a beginning, said one individual that was running for governor. And it amazes me how we have people keep talking about this is a historic moment. And it's amazing. We in the present have no idea what a historic moment is. History has shown that when you try to make something based on the fact that you think it's a historical moment, you usually make a bad decision. A lot of things that people thought were historic don't even get a line in our history books. So maybe what we should do is just do the job the right way, make a good decision, and let what is historic up to up to historians. The other part of having a constitutional amendment is anyone who challenges the state funding for education, rather than the state having to prove support for education, that the education was significant, anyone who challenges support would have to show it wasn't. So basically, it was going to give us in the State House complete control, complete power to determine what we just thought was an adequate education. And remember, right now, we think an adequate education is $3,450. And I had a committee chair down the committee I served, and she came and says, the only responsibility of the state of New Hampshire is to teach kids to read and write. And once we teach them to read or write, it's their responsibility, it's our children's responsibility to educate themselves. And so we want the public to trust that we will do the right thing. And now we want to be able to take the courts out and say, hey, people, you have to prove that we're not doing the right thing. But oh yeah, we have all the resources of the Attorney General's office to protect us. So you're going to have to come up with all the money to try to convince the court that we're not doing enough, which is almost an impossible task. You have to prove a negative because, and really, if we define what we consider adequate and we decide what it costs to provide an adequate education, how can you prove that we're not providing enough money to support that adequate education? Like we did 3 years ago, we decided, well, for example, we only want to spend $1 billion and there's so many kids in the state of New Hampshire, and so what would an adequate education cost? So we divide out the kids, bang, bang, bang. Okay, the adequate education is $3,450, and let's go from there. People are saying that we cannot target aid, which is a bull crap statement. They know better. We do target aid all the time. We give money to children with English as second language, and we give money to schools that have a high number of free and reduced lunches. That's how we target aid. And one of the goals where they kept saying over and over again, we should not fund all the children. So let's look at it. So if you're from a real wealthy community and the state says, you know what, we're not going to pay a single penny to educate your children. We're only going to educate children from poor communities. I don't see how that passes constitutional muster. We are responsible for educating the children. So if the state has determined that $3,400 is an adequate education, I believe, and a lot of people believe, that every child should get $3,400. And if the community wants to provide extra money, they can provide extra money. But that's why it didn't pass, and thank God it didn't pass, because it could have destroyed the quality of education in a city like Keene. And so we don't need to go back to the prior Claremont. Keene gets I think they're only getting about $1 million last time. We get about $10 million. Now, where in the world we'd come up with $9 million more to maintain the quality of education? We're worrying about closing one school. If we had to lose $9 million, we would have much larger classes, and we may have to close 2 schools. So, hope you enjoy the clip. I think you might find it quite disgusting, but that's your elected officials at work. And so when you get ready to go and vote in the primary, make sure you vote for the best person, not for the party. Ask questions, because your future depends on it and our children's future depends on it. So, see you later. I'll see you on the long road. Thank you.
Sometimes come with great cost. Voting, healthcare maybe. Now first, if you are voting against CACR 12 because it refers to the responsibility of the legislature to maintain a system of primary and secondary education, I would advise you, don't. The best reason for this came to me actually preparing to come here this morning. I was thinking about what our Constitution originally said. I had downloaded the articles regarding education from other constitutions, and I came upon Maine, which is almost identical, at least in spirit, to what rested in our Constitution until 1966. It read in part, and his knowledge of these things is most likely to be propagated through a society through public instruction of public worship of the deity and instruction in morality and religion. Therefore, to promote these important purposes, the people of this state have a right to empower and to hereby fully empower the legislature to authorize from time to time several towns, parishes, bodies, corporate, or religious societies within the state. Now,
Give some thought to let the people make that decision. Let's not do it.
It rested in the Bill of
Are you
Rights.
going to run again? I don't know.
When the people originally created this state, they expected their legislature to create a system of education so that the people would know how to control their government.
You control your...
Sorry.
No problem.
Pursuant to that, they created They require that every
You control
town of
your
more than
government
50
by having
voters
an uneducated
create a public
voters.
school. And that was only 1/3 of the people necessary to have individual
Let Keene
representation
decide.
in the legislature that was making those laws.
Oh, seriously.
If you want to maintain the character of New Hampshire,
I'm not afraid of anything, you know.
then yes,
But
we
people
do
of
have a
Keene though to elect the
responsibility to make sure that
representatives to
people
do the
are
right thing.
educated.
It's a representative government, right?
I've talked to a lot of leaders in Keene.
I don't see
They want a
this
chance to
legislation,
vote on
this
this.
proposal as being without problems. One of my
say
biggest
give it a
concerns, disparity. Disparity implies both positive and negative deviations. We had the Senate request an opinion of the judiciary this year on Part 2, Article 51. It was the clear intent of the author and Constitutional Convention that that was intended to give greater power to the legislature, notwithstanding the judiciary found completely the opposite. Despite ample record, what will happen when there's a future judiciary? We better make it amply clear, both in this debate and in the voter's guide, that it is not our intention that any legislature ever have the power to clip the wings of a town with good fiscal capacity. Our intention is only to bootstrap those towns in need, and that's not in the amendment. It will have to come in other places. But it does say that we have full discretion on how to do that. My biggest compunction is that it says, if you diagram the sentence, that this legislature and all future legislatures have the responsibility to mitigate disparities, local disparities in fiscal capacity. That really bothers me. It reads an awful lot like from those according to their ability to those according to their need.
I don't think he's going to
I
get
do have a
enough
problem.
unless you get more people here.
Maybe if he drags this on.
But we are also addressing an overreach of the court.
I have no idea what he's talking
This is your conscience. You have to do
He's
what
all
you
over
will
the
have
place.
to
He
live
doesn't
with
know. He's not talking the way he normally
for the
does.
next
I
20
would
years.
not be able to tell you if it's for it.
I can't.
Yeah.
Are there downsides to passing this and having this fail? Actually, yeah.
He's for it.
If this fails in the ballot box, the newspapers won't say that the amendment was imperfect.
Who's speaking
They'll
against
say
it?
the people if you're clear on it.
JR, Andy,
We have a precedent deal with.
I am, Gary.
Part of me hopes it will pass, part of me not.
Sign over here, though.
You're right.
Yeah, that
But you have to do what you believe to be the best for the people.
He just.
Thank you.
county budget.
Questions on the adoption of the committee conference report, CHCR 12.
It's June
Chair
20th.
recognizes Representative Dunbar to hold to speak to the question.
The 20th of June, I think it's a Wednesday, but I'm not sure. You'll get it out.
I just figured.
Today is what? Today is the 6th?
60 day. Yep.
So it'll be 14 would be a Wednesday.
Yeah, no, the 20th is definitely.
I'm pretty sure it's the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So we don't know.
Members of the House.
What's going on.
I think it's for it.
Claremont 1 happened. The lower court found the following.
You were right. He said that half of me thinks it should pass, hopes it pass, half of me thinks it shouldn't pass.
Regarding the equality, uniformity, or even adequacy of education. Thus, the New Hampshire Constitution imposes no qualitative standard of education which must be met. Likewise, the New Hampshire Constitution imposes no quantifiable financial duty regarding education. There is no mention of funding or even, quote, providing or, quote, maintaining education. The only duty set forth in the amorphous duty is to cherish. I ask you that if you go and talk to the citizens of this state and ask what was wrong with Claremont, they will come to you and say that the court overstepped its bounds when it redefined the word cherish. I don't have a dictionary from when our Constitution was written, but I do have one that's a facsimile of the one from 1828. Cherish means to treat with tenderness and affection. another definition. To hold dear, to embrace, yet another definition. And to treat in a manner to encourage, like protection. I ask that you not support this amendment and address the root cause of the Claremont problem by fixing what the court overstepped its bounds when it found a new definition for the word cherish. Thank you.
Questions on the adoption of the committee of conference report. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Andover, Representative Coffey, to speak to the question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I spent a great deal of time looking at this, and I spent a great deal of time really feeling like I was on the fence about it. So what I spent my time doing, rather than listening to this piece or that piece, was talking to my constituents. I spoke to the school board in my town. I spoke to the principals in my community. I spoke to teachers. I spoke to my neighbors. And the thing that was overwhelming to me and helped me make my decision to support this today was that about 80% of all of the constituents that I spoke to said the same thing. I want to know more. I want to hear more. I want to make a more informed decision. My vote today and your vote today is to allow our constituents to do just that. To become more informed.
How do you become more informed on the ballot box?
To learn more. And to make an informed decision when they go in November to vote. What we do here today is to give them that right.
Not good for Nashua.
I have to say that I was surprised. I was surprised.
It's not good for a lot of
people that
communities.
wanted that answer, gave me that answer. Realistically, only about 20% of the people I talked to
When
had
you
a
keep
real
looking
opinion
at
on
all
whether they
the
were
elderly
for or against
retirees
it.
that are moving
And those folks
into
are
New
pretty much
Hampshire
split.
who have no kids or
I had
grandkids,
principals tell me they wanted to
they're
know
going to keep
more.
running for office here, and they're going to
I
keep
had
cutting
others tell
funding
me
to education.
They needed more information. They wanted to be a part of this decision. It was important to them. It was important regarding their taxes.
well
It was
cut
important
ourselves
regarding their
Yep.
schools.
by 3/4
It's important to
when
me,
everything on the
Karen.
ballot.
The bottom line is, what we do now is us saying that we'll give them the right to get that information, to make an informed decision, and to cast their vote in November.
I think anytime.
I'm going to give them that right. I hope you will too.
Member here for a question.
Why haven't we given them the information over the last year and a half?
How about the last 20 years?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much for taking my question. Would you believe that I struggle with the term responsibility?
How do you struggle with the word responsibility? Responsibility is responsibility. There's only one meaning.
Further question.
But would you believe that it's not our responsibility? Thank you. Would you believe that it's not us deciding it's our responsibility, but your constituents and my constituents that will be telling us that it is in fact our responsibility?
So what he's asking
I
is,
believe I had constituents say the same thing.
I don't want to take responsibility. I want you to tell me what my responsibility is.
12, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Derry, Representative.
I've never heard that in any leadership school. Responsibility is responsibility. Leaders take responsibility.
And also, how about the standards
Yeah.
thing? Some of them have to
Mr.
be
Speaker,
reasonable
thank
and
you,
some
members
of
of
them
the
don't.
House. I stand
We had
here
the,
today as a representative from Derry, just like I did
chair
last year as a
said,
representative from Derry.
as long as we teach the
Derry
people how to read
traditionally
and
is a
write,
town that
they
has
can
been against
educate
any
themselves. We don't have any other more
My
responsibility.
I
husband
am
calls
not
this
that
their You Be
representative,
Done
and I told voters
initiative.
that when I went door to door. I advertised it very loudly that I was going to support a constitutional amendment to change educational funding reform. And I worked very hard in the last year behind the scenes to attempt to get that language together that we could give the people to decide on. I think, however, that this language that we're giving the people to decide on will in fact enshrine Claremont in our Constitution. It will take the court's words.
It's so funny
and we'll
that
put
he
it in
thinks
our
it will enshrine
Constitution,
Claremont,
which is a
and
permanent
we
thing
think it
that will
doesn't
never change.
enshrine it
Right now,
enough.
we have the possibility of changing our educational laws to better suit free market courses and to bring competition into education,
So-
to promote voucher systems. If there's any constitutional amendment, it should be allowed. We should be allowed to have vouchers to give money, use our
Part
money
of the free
that
market
goes with the
says
parent.
if it ain't worth
And
educating
that
you, you
money
don't get
follows the
educated.
child. That's the type of constitutional amendment I'd like to see. That would be a good constitutional
It's just
amendment. What we have here, however, gives us the responsibility permanently to maintain a system of public education. I believe in public education to some degree. I think there is a place for it in our society. Certainly it's a
And the
safety net, and
homeschoolers
maybe
really
even for people
because they're
to
like
choose to use that type of education if it's their desire to do so. However, if someone does not want to choose a public education and they
Hear what he
want to
just
go
said?
into a private school
He
or they
said
want to
the
homeschool,
purpose of a
they should
public
be able to take the
education is
dollars
a
that they
safety
work
net.
very hard for with them
And so
spend
basically,
it on
if you're
their own
poor or
children
disabled or
at a
whatever,
different school.
we'll give you a
It's
safety
my
net.
strong contention that with the responsibility to maintain a system of public education, we will have to maintain the system of public education, and we will be able to put absolutely no less dollars into the system than we do today. In fact, we very likely will have to pay more money towards public education because of inflation and any number of mandates that we might pass under our full
He
power
just said
authority
that
to make reasonable
he
standards.
supports public education and agree, and there is a place for it, but the place is as a safety net.
Exactly.
So in a free market, I don't educate anybody that's not going to make no money. So if you're really poor, or a person of color, or disabled, that's what the safety net's for. Public education would be a safety net.
Claremont was right, and we aren't going to fight anymore. We give up. You win. I'm not ready to do that. I'm raising the battle flags right here, right now, and I'm asking you to join me to continue this fight. We can come up with a constitutional
The reason I'm doing
amendment
it
to
is
give
I put
to
on
the
my
people,
TV show.
to give
I
them
did
the choice
the,
on this. But if we give them this
The one with
amendment,
O'Brien,
there will
the
be no
apology,
choice.
I taped about
It'll
30
be,
minutes of it and put it on the TV
if you
show.
pass it, we have Claremont. If
The
you
long
don't
run.
pass it, we have
And
Claremont.
so what happens is, by doing
There's no
it this
choice in
way,
that. And
it's
I'm
better than me
asking
trying to
you
explain
to
it.
give them a choice by
so
voting
what
this
you're gonna
down
see right
today,
here,
so that we can pass a constitutional amendment next year, or 4 years from now, or 10 years from now, or however long it takes to make this right with our
But I also
people.
put them all up on
Let's
YouTube,
use
so
our
all TV
judgment.
shows are
Let's
on
be
YouTube.
leaders, and let's not do the wrong thing and pass this amendment. I'm going to tell you that the Constitution, whether it's the U.S. Constitution or the New Hampshire Constitution, was not designed for lawyers to interpret it. It was designed for the people to read it in plain English and understand it. And a very plain reading of these words, the responsibility to maintain a system of public elementary and secondary education, means that we will be on the hook for that for good. Yes, the second sentence qualifies it, but it makes it worse, not better. It says the full power and authority to make reasonable standards for elementary and secondary public education. Sure, we do that now by law. I agree with that. That's law currently. But if it's in the Constitution, it will forever be law. And there will be no changing it. I would prefer if the state
When I
created
went to
some
school in
recommendations.
Massachusetts,
Maybe
we
they
used to have an 8th grade
gave
test,
local
blind
communities
test.
4 or 5 curricula to choose
I
from
grew up
and say
in
we
welfare
approve of
area.
all these
I
curricula,
got really
but you,
high
the local
on
community,
the test.
decide what's best
So
for your
they say
children.
you'll
Now
go
that would be
Latin,
school choice.
and so I
Now
got
that
into
would
the high
be
group.
the state properly
But a lot of
exercising
the
its role
rich
to
people
cherish
talk about
education.
helping
However,
poor kids as
our
long as
system
it doesn't
of public
displace their
education is
child.
the system.
And
And
so
I'll tell you why.
by the
Cherish
test,
means
the test
fun.
says I have an
Important
IQ, I
stretch
just
the
have a lot
language
more
that far to
qualified
make
than
cherish
you.
mean fun.
And so there's a number
Then
of
they
people that
most
say, well,
definitely
he's on welfare.
will make a
Why did he
system
deserve
mean the
this?
system.
And that's what a lot of these
Additionally, if we're
they're trying
mitigating
to find
local
different
disparities,
ways,
as the
quote
representative
unquote,
from
to
Fremont
be
says,
politically
we are
correct
redistributing
without
wealth
saying
and we're
is we
putting
want to help
socialism
people,
into our
but as long as they
Constitution.
don't
I can't
take our
support that, and I
kids
hope you would agree with
serious.
me. I think our
And
Constitution
I think
currently
that's the
says
big
that we
part.
treat
A
everyone
lot of
equally
these
under
people
the law.
into like UNH and other places because of the family background or where they went to school, but they may not be the most intelligent or most qualified. They just had
What I
greater
tell you about
opportunity.
education
And
and
so,
this legislature and
the whole
urge to
purpose
do
of this
something now, we have to do something.
amendment
Well, no, we
is
don't
to
have
limit
to do something
opportunity.
if something is the wrong thing. We have to do
Because
nothing if
what we're finding
that is the right
out,
thing
given
to do, and I'm telling you that
opportunity,
it
we
is.
have a lot of kids
There's
with
a
a lot of
conflict of
potential
interest with the
who
state
come from
running
poor
education.
parents.
The state's interest is in accumulating power. That's what the state wants to do. And if the state is in charge of education, I'm telling you right now, they're going to make that education as minimal as they can so that they can have a population that's controllable. And education was never meant to be run by the state. It was meant to be run by parents and local communities.
No, I come from
so
poverty
that
and I became a
children
Marine
can truly be
colonel.
educated.
And it's
I'm
all
gonna
because of
leave you with
education.
this. I think it's egotistical to think that we're the legislature that has to do this. I think it's not egotistical to say we can wait longer and trust the
Quality
future legislature to do
education
this.
gave me the
And remember,
opportunity
those
to
who are
display.
feeling
It doesn't guarantee that I'm going to work for it, but I was given the
resignation to the
opportunity.
fact that
And
we've
a
been
lot of
fighting
people
for
take
18 years
advantage
and
of the
haven't accomplished what we
opportunity
want.
and move
I
forward.
want you to remember George Washington before he crossed the Delaware. George Washington thought that they were going to lose the war and his troops were leaving. He ran out of money. He prayed to Almighty Providence that they would have what it took to win. And then they crossed the Delaware and you know what happened. But George Washington, the man in the portrait behind me, was in the same place we are today. And I urge you to follow his
We
example.
cannot
Vote
compare
this down.
ourselves to George Washington
the
crossing the
right thing.
Delaware
Thank you.
from Trenton.
Member yields for a question. Member does not yield for a question. The question before the House is the recommendation, motion to adopt the committee
The
report
part with George
on
Washington,
CACR 12.
yes, he had
Chair
concerns,
recognizes
but as a
the gentleman
leader,
from Nashua,
he
Representative
never
Mahoney.
displayed those
State the
concerns.
question.
He always displayed the ability to get the job done. That's the leadership. He wasn't making excuses. And he's not saying the only reason we got a nation is because I prayed to God. And God said I was the best person.
For those who fought for our American way of life, to ensure our representative form of government, to ensure our right as free people to make decisions at the ballot box, would not be taken away by a tyrannical power poised to take over the world. And Supreme Allied Commander General Eisenhower stated in his D-Day message to the soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade, toward which we have striven many months.
So now he's quoting President Eisenhower.
The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you.
I just got an acer
Accompanied with our brave
that takes
allies and brothers
pictures,
in
but I
arms
can't
on
figure
other
out how to
fronts,
get it. They
you
keep
will
getting
bring about
me
destruction
instead
of
of
the
there.
German war machine.
There's a little button over here that will flip it. So if I don't push the button, it just shows me. It's got a forward camera and it's got a rear camera. So I'm using the rear camera.
Okay, so I have to find that button.
Yeah.
You will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs in 1940-41. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence
I'm
in
taking
your
this to
courage
put on
and
a TV
devotion.
show because it's better than explaining. It just allows the people watching.
Well, that's a good idea, yeah.
Good luck.
It takes video also?
Yeah, this is taking video right now.
Oh, cool.
HD, high definition video, so it comes out really good on
Did
TV.
not mention,
Wow.
but history records are all the compromises he made during the planning of Operation Overlord. There were vehement disagreements in strategy and tactics at every level, from Churchill and Roosevelt to the headstrong commanders Montgomery and Bradley to the several military branches. Each had their own views on how best to establish and accomplish the goal. It was Eisenhower who kept his eye on the objective, would not allow the perfect to become the enemy of the good, and through persuasion and compromise organized the largest successful military invasion in history. Here we are on that anniversary of that fateful day where we, not with guns and bullets, but with the authority given to us by the people of New Hampshire, can set in motion a plan that will finally bring an end to the stranglehold placed upon the people of this great state by the Supreme Court's Claremont and Londonderry opinions. We in this chamber can either
Since when is $3,450 to educate a child to stranglehold on the state?
or we can fail to learn from history, allow the perfect to become the enemy of the good, lose sight of the goal, and grasp defeat from the hands of victory. Eisenhower decided that Operation Overlord, with its compromises, would achieve the goal and bring success. He decided that the perfect would not become the enemy of the good. Now we must make a decision. Is CACR 12 perfect? No. But will it solve the education policy and funding problem this state has faced for the past 19 years? Yes. CACR 12, as proposed in the Committee of Conference Amendment, will do the following. 1. It will return the education policy and funding decision-making to the legislative branch, to the people's elected representatives. No longer will unelected and unaccountable judges be making those decisions. 2. It restores the tradition of our state-local partnership regarding education policy and funding. 3. It restores the state's ability to target education aid to the neediest of our communities. That was the original goal of the town of Claremont when it sued the state, to provide Claremont and our neediest towns financial help so they could provide similar basic educational opportunities for their children that our wealthier communities were providing to their children. And 4, it ensures the continuation of robust educational alternatives such as our growing public charter schools and homeschooling. Today, as we honor those who gave the ultimate sacrifice to ensure our American way of life, to ensure a representative form of government, to ensure a right as a free people to make decisions at the ballot box, please vote with me to send CACR 12 to the people by pressing the green button. Let the people of New Hampshire finally have their say on this issue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question before the House is the committee report on CACR 12, Committee Conference report. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Litchfield, Representative Lambert, to speak to the question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I apologize. My voice is not what normally is. I said I apologize. My voice isn't normally, or isn't what it normally is. CACR 12 is about education. But it's not about the education that a lot of people have been talking about today, in my opinion. It's less about the education of children and more about the education of our citizens and the Supreme Court and clarity of the will of our people. The Constitution tells us we're supposed to cherish education, but we're not exactly clear on what the people who voted for that Constitution meant. And we've left that to our Supreme Court to decide. Now is our opportunity to educate our citizens on the choices and let them choose a message and deliver that message to us, to the Supreme Court, and to the governor. It's our job to educate them and to give them a choice. Everyone who says that a vote today is a vote to enshrine Claremont is denying our citizens the opportunity to engage in the dialogue. If our citizens are worthy of being able to consider every side and finally choose one way or another, it's our responsibility to press the green button. I personally would like to press the red button for a large number of reasons. Some of you will see my name on a press release today about all the reasons I think this amendment might be a bad idea. But at the end of the day, the education keeps coming in. And our citizens need the opportunity to weigh both sides and to make that decision for themselves.
But here's what happens, it's saying is, I know it's a bad bill, but I want the people to vote to give me cover. I don't know what my responsibility is, so I want the people to vote to tell me what my responsibility is.
Right.
And so,
Same thing for the income tax.
Questions on the adoption of the committee conference report of CACR?
so the best thing is that people should, if you have people who don't know, are going to vote for something they know it's bad, don't know what their responsibility is. Maybe the people
Thank you,
should vote them out.
Mr. Speaker.
Vote someone who's got responsibility.
I want to make it clear at the outset that I rise in opposition to the amendment. Because some of the speeches I listened to, I had kind of weighed in my mind whether they were for or against it.
Thank you.
Let me make it perfectly clear at the outset that I could speak against this amendment from a conservative
Hey, nice
point
suit.
of view. I could speak against this amendment from a liberal point of view. And the very fact that I can debate myself is an indication that this is not the amendment we need. All this amendment will do is muddy the waters that have begun to become clearer on education funding. If I thought this amendment would clarify the situation and take us to the land of everything's going to be good, then I would vote in favor of this. But I think this will only make matters worse, and at the same time, this amendment does nothing that we cannot already do now. So rather than arguing myself from the left or from the right, I've been around for a long time, and I've been doing education funding for a long time. So let me explain that comment that if we do nothing, we already have the power to do what this amendment will do. I'm not going to go back to D-Day or to Dwight David Eisenhower, my second favorite president of all time. There's number one. But I will go back to 1999, when I was on the Finance Committee, and the gentleman from Ware decided to put me on Division 4, which was a special division dealing with Claremont funding. That's how long we've been fighting with this. And there are three basic incarnations, at least, maybe more, but I'd like to talk about three. Back in 1999, we realized that we needed to target aid. We realized that certain towns were richer than others and didn't deserve as much aid as certain weaker towns or poorer towns, whatever word you want to use. That's when we came up with the idea of using free and reduced lunch as a proxy for rich versus poor. It was not perfect, but you know it was pretty good because all the statisticians and the people that know the numbers and everything will tell you that free reduced lunch is a pretty good proxy for determining where more aid is needed. I remember the gentleman from New Ipswich at the time said that we may be able to want to break it down this way or this way, and we figured a little bit. But even back at the very beginning of this arduous process, without any amendment, we targeted aid. The problem is not an amendment. The problem is not wording. The problem lies not in the stars, but in ourselves, in the people that come here to make this work. We have changed so often that it will make your head spin. And if we pass this amendment, it's only going to make your head spin more. I remember speaking at this well when the Gatz's plan passed. Now, you may remember the Gatz's plan. It took us another step as far as targeting aid was concerned. It was good for Manchester. It was good for a lot of towns. It was struck down as unconstitutional, but not because of the targeting. It was struck down because it allowed the statewide property tax to be forgiven on the property-rich towns. I told Ted at the time, I said, Mr. Senator, I agree with what you're trying to do. It's a good formula, but I don't think it's going to be legal because of the property-rich towns. I was right. Nothing about this amendment will address the fundamental problem of the property-rich towns having to pay what they consider more than their fair share. So this amendment doesn't solve any problem. It only muddies the water and makes things worse. So then we came to reincarnation or incarnation number 2, which I believe was worked upon when the Democrats took control. And as I was trying to fall asleep last night, I remembered Senator Estabrook was behind this plan. Excellent plan. But it did even more targeting of aid. And it did it in such an ingenious fashion that I remember speaking about 15 minutes at the well that time, going through community by community and saying, you know, your town benefits because according to this way of targeting aid, you have to satisfy 2 needs. You have to have per capita income below the state average. Thus, Gary was hurt by the plan because per capita income is above the state average. And you have to have equalized valuation per pupil below the state average. Rather ingenious formula. It got the aid to the towns that probably needed it most because it targeted poor people and poor property values. So how can you say that we need this amendment to target aid? We've been doing it for 15 years. What we have not been doing is living up to our word. After that targeting passed, Manchester stood to get an extra $15 million for property valuation per pupil, poor as far as average income is concerned. But guess what happened? Somebody said, no, we don't want Manchester getting that much money, so we have to change the formula. First of all, they said, we're going to delay it kicking in for 2 years. So we did do what was right, we delayed it, and then we changed the formula. You don't need an amendment to do what's right. You do need an amendment to muddy the waters more so that everybody conceivably could be heard. Now, I promise never to lie when I stand here, so I'm not going to tell you that if this passes, Manchester will lose $15 million. But I did speak with His Honor the Mayor last night because I was concerned about his comments in the paper. And he agreed with me that there's a chance that Manchester could lose a great deal of money. There's a chance that any town could lose a great deal of money. There's a probability that Bedford will lose all its money, Wyndham will lose all its money, whether it should or not, that would be an argument for the future. I believe we're on the right track as far as what we're doing now. We're getting along just fine, thank you. Everybody doesn't get exactly what they want, but my property taxes would go up about $1,000. Yours might go up $2,000 if we stop doing aid. So I'm not going to give you the conservative argument that the state has no business in education. I'm not going to give you the liberal argument that we have everything to do with education, but I am going to say that we are targeting now. We don't need this amendment to target. This amendment will not fix the problem of donor towns. What this amendment will do is create full employment for lawyers. Now, I was over at the Supreme Court when it was at 9 o'clock this morning, and I heard lawyers arguing and arguing. And if you pass this amendment, mark my words, you're not going to have fewer lawsuits, fewer bits of turmoil. It's going to be much, much worse. So from a practical point of view, please don't pass this. And you know it's CACR 12. We have another one, CACR 16, 26, I think, coming up, which means that we've got at least 26 amendments. Now, if you want to say let the people decide, really, we've passed one out of more than 26. So we have never said let the people decide. I agree that the people should decide, but only when the argument put to them can be made clearly and cogently so that they'll understand it. No income tax, clear argument, let the people decide. 60% cap on fast food tax, 60% needed, clear. People can decide that, whether they or not they want it, they can decide it. But when you have so many lawyers lining up to argue the point, the people really cannot decide on this in a great, educated fashion. So maybe we need people like Representative Blair, who's been working on this since 1999, and other people who've been working on it that have a little more expertise than that great people. So we haven't passed 26 amendments onto the people. We shouldn't pass this one onto them either, because it would only create more confusion about politics. That is never a good thing.